Hi everybody, thanks for watching this video. Coming to you from home today, back from San Diego, a wetter trip than I certainly had expected. It was very interesting watching the folks in Southern California deal with a lot of rain. I guess they haven't had all that much, but what was more interesting was watching them deal with the quote-unquote cold. It was in the upper 50s, lower 60s, and you should have seen the folks in, winter jackets and hats and gloves and scarves. For us, upper 50s, lower 60s was really shorts weather. I mean, given what was going on back here, but it was a very successful trip. Thank you all for your continuing participation. Thanks for getting your assignments in. Thanks for participating in the discussions. The discussion for this week, unlike some of the others, I've put a specific end date and time, so please be aware of that. The discussion for week 4 will conclude on Friday the 17th not Friday the 17th, Sunday the 17th at 6 p.m. Obviously, there's no sense getting involved in a discussion, 3 weeks after it's over. That's really not fair to, everyone else who has participated. Thank you for getting your assignments in. An apology in my attempt to, line up the assignment titles with the weeks. I apparently made 2 assignments due the same time. Thanks to those of you who, did that, and for those of you who didn't, and just sort of, weeked it out. That's okay too. Don't worry about it. Nothing is late, so don't be concerned about that. The topic this week in chapter 4, it leads with convergence and integrated communications. Convergence is a bit of a difficult concept, but fortunately, the person who is one of the major thinkers in talking about convergence is actually, as far as I know, still around. He's made several videos. You've read about him, Henry Jenkins. I have 2 of them in the slides presentations that I'm using for my day classes in discussing the material in this chapter. I posted that. As always, I encourage you to, look at those slides. Gives you a sense of the topics that I'm emphasizing with my day classes. And both these videos from Professor Jenkins, I think, explains the idea of convergence a little bit more. The text also talks about another concept of Professor Jenkins, which I think is important, and that's the black box fallacy. The idea that someday there's going to be one box or one piece of technology or one piece of equipment that is going to satisfy all our needs. And the fact of the matter is, it just doesn't work that way. Our demands keep changing. The technology keeps changing. I mean, take a look at our phones. The phone that we bought 2 years ago, that we thought was the be-all and end-all, had everything that we needed. I couldn't think of anything else that we need for our phone. Yeah, within a year later, gee, it was kind of obsolete maybe, and we needed a new one if we could afford it. But certainly if you have a phone for, more than a couple of years, you're sort of outdated and you're sort of behind the times. So this idea that there's going to be one piece of technology that's going to satisfy all our needs just is a black box fallacy. Something else that chapter 4 gets into, or we get into in week 4, is this concept of integrated communications. This idea that marketing and public relations and advertising, though separate with different functions, are also very much linked together now, again, because of the, technology. Advertising and marketing needs public relations and vice versa. Public relations can help create excitement over a new product or a new service, by, staging events, which is sort of a public relations function. Public relations is quite often, responsible for the social media, the company's Facebook page or the company's Twitter feed or the company's page on Instagram or Pinterest. So there has to be much more of a link between all the functions of communication than there has been in the past. And that's something relatively new in the public relations business. The text also introduces a concept that we'll discuss and you'll read about further next week, this concept of relationships. That things these days aren't simply transactional. It's not simply, you go, you buy a car, the salesperson shakes your hand and figures, well, I'm never going to see them again. If you've ever bought a car or you've been to a furniture store or you've made any kind of major purchase, you know that it's not unusual for you to hear again from the particular salesperson or the particular dealership or the particular furniture store. They keep following up and following up. Maybe you get a Christmas card. Maybe you get a card, a year later saying, happy anniversary on the first year of your purchasing this particular car. The game has really changed, and it's much more about building relationships. I certainly know in the real estate business that I'm involved with, helping my wife, it's very much a relationship business. We keep in contact with people, who bought homes 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because when they are ready to sell their home and buy their next home, we want them to think of my wife's real estate practice. And really the only way you can ensure that is if you keep in touch with those people. And we do it using a variety of sources, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and mailings and making phone calls. And it's a certainly never-ending process. So in the next chapter, next week, we'll be getting into, relationships much more. And remember, it's relationship building that's one of the key functions of public relations. And that's why this idea of integrated marketing communications, how public relations plays a role in marketing, in advertising, really is important. It's not a particular department over there, that God forbid doesn't get involved with the people in advertising. So I hope you enjoy the material this week. Please participate in the discussion. The discussion question is about something else you read about in the chapter called word of mouth marketing. And I ask if you've ever made a purchase or you've ever taken advantage of a service, based on word of mouth. And how well did that go? Was it a good decision? Was it a bad decision? Would you do it again? So I'm asking you to share that with all of us. Comment on at least one other person's experience. This is always a fun one for people to do because we have great experiences based on what people tell us, and sometimes the word of mouth recommendation really doesn't pan out. So enjoy your week, folks. Thank you again for participating, and I'll be talking with you next week.